The arena in downtown Tokyo was alive with energy. Thousands of martial arts fans filled the seats, waving flags, cameras flashing like lightning. On the center mat stood two men who couldn't be more different. One, tall, calm, dressed in a simple black gi, Steven Seagal, the Aikido master known for his stillness that hides sudden power. The other, broad as a mountain, weighing nearly 400 pounds, Hiroshi Takada, a national sumo champion, whose every step made the floor tremble. The crowd had come for demonstrations of discipline and technique, but they were about to witness something else, a clash of ego and humility. When Seagal stepped forward, the crowd quieted. He bowed politely to Hiroshi. The wrestler gave a short, half-hearted bow and chuckled. "Is this the famous Hollywood fighter?" he said through a translator, patting his huge stomach. "I've eaten meals bigger than him." Laughter erupted across the stands. Even some of the students on the edge of the mat tried to hide their smiles. Seagal didn't flinch. His hands stayed behind his back, his expression unreadable, calm, patient, almost detached. Hiroshi, sensing the laughter of the crowd behind him, played it up even more. He stomped once, twice, a thunderous boom that echoed through the hall. "Let us see if movie magic works in real life," he shouted. The crowd roared with excitement, phones held high, ready to record the showdown. Seagal slowly stepped closer. He spoke in a low voice that only those nearest could hear. "Technique isn't magic," he said. "It's balance." Hiroshi grinned, towering over him by nearly a foot. "We'll see whose balance breaks first," the host announced. Next, a friendly exhibition. Sumo power versus Aikido technique. The lights brightened. Cameras zoomed in. The atmosphere turned electric. Half the audience cheering for raw strength, the other half whispering about Seagal's mysterious skill. Hiroshi flexed, ready to charge. Seagal closed his eyes for a brief second, breathing deeply. You could feel the tension, respect and ridicule hanging in the same air, and then the moment froze. What happened next left the entire arena completely silent. The crowd's anticipation filled the air like static before a storm. Everyone in the arena could feel something brewing. Pride versus patience, muscle versus mastery. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a fight. It is a friendly demonstration of discipline and control." But nobody came to see friendly. They came to see what happens when a mountain meets still water. Hiroshi Takada rolled his shoulders and stomped again, sending vibrations through the mat. He raised both hands and called out, "Seagal-san, come. Let us see if your Hollywood moves can move me." The crowd laughed. Cameras flashed. He leaned forward, mocking Seagal's slow, meditative stance, pretending to move in exaggerated slow motion, hands flowing lazily through the air. The crowd roared with laughter. Even the announcer chuckled awkwardly, but Steven Seagal didn't react. Not even a smirk. He simply blinked once, lowered his hands, and took a single small step forward. Quiet, graceful, completely unfazed. Every movement he made was slow, deliberate, controlled. Hiroshi turned to the audience and grinned, clearly playing to them. "This is what you call martial arts?" he barked in Japanese. He made another exaggerated motion, pretending to fall asleep mid-stance. Laughter erupted again, but Seagal didn't move. He was watching and studying. Every stomp, every breath, every boast from Hiroshi was an opening. Finally, Seagal spoke, his voice calm but cold. "You mock what you don't understand." The words echoed through the microphone clipped to his GI. Hiroshi stopped laughing for the first time. He squinted, half amused, half annoyed. "Then teach me," he said, spreading his arms wide. "Show me your understanding." The host quickly stepped between them, nervous but smiling. Okay. Gentlemen, remember, this is just for demonstration. No injuries, please." The audience laughed again, but now the laughter carried tension. Hiroshi crouched into his sumo stance, feet wide, fists ready, a wall of power. He clapped his hands together once, twice, and roared from deep within his chest. The sound alone made the front row flinch. Seagal remained still. His feet barely shifted. His hands stayed relaxed, fingertips gently curved. A living contrast to the massive, roaring sumo. His breathing was so quiet that only the nearby cameraman noticed it. Steady, rhythmic, centered. Hiroshi lunged forward. The floor shook as 400 pounds of power charged toward Seagal. Gasps filled the air. People genuinely feared for Seagal's safety. But Seagal didn't brace or dodge. He simply turned, just slightly, and Hiroshi's shoulder barely grazed him before the momentum carried the giant past him. Hiroshi stumbled, catching himself on the mat before falling. The crowd screamed, half in shock, half in confusion. Seagal turned slowly and said, "Energy goes where the body sends it. You just sent yours into the floor." The audience fell silent for a split second, then erupted. Some cheered, some laughed nervously. Others couldn't believe what they saw. A few thought it must have been an accident. But Seagal's expression said otherwise. He bowed slightly to Hiroshi as if inviting him to try again. Hiroshi growled under his breath. His pride was on the line now. He stood tall, sweat glistening on his forehead, his chest rising and falling. "Again," he said. Seagal nodded once. "As you wish." The sumo took a deep breath, slapping his belly and thighs, the ancient sumo ritual before a charge. The crowd began to chant his name. "Hiroshi!"
Shiroshi.
Stomps echoed. The floor shook again. In the stands, one fan shouted, "Let's see if the Hollywood guy can survive this one." Another countered, "Don't underestimate Seagal, he's a master." The entire arena had split into two sides, Team Sumo versus Team Seagal. The energy was electric. Hiroshi crouched low, eyes burning with focus. Seagal merely lifted his hand slightly, palm open like a man greeting a friend or deflecting a storm. The announcer backed away quickly. "This could get interesting," he muttered under his breath. Hiroshi exploded forward faster this time, his roar shaking the rafters. He was sure this charge would end it. A clean push, an easy victory. Seagal stepped in. One smooth motion, a pivot, a redirection. He didn't push, didn't block, he guided. And somehow Hiroshi's massive body slid off balance again, stumbling just enough to kill his momentum. Gasps echoed through the crowd. This wasn't brute strength. This was art. Seagal adjusted his stance slightly and said, "Power without control is chaos." Even Hiroshi paused, chest heaving, face flushed. For the first time, the crowd went quiet. The laughter was gone. People were beginning to sense it. This wasn't luck. Seagal's calm was dangerous, and the sumo wrestler, once laughing, now clenched his fists, realizing this wasn't going to be a show. It was about to become a lesson. The crowd waited in total silence. The tension was thick enough to cut with a sword, and then, the host's voice cut through the quiet. "Round 2 begins now. All right, let's settle this once and for all. Who do you think wins in the end? Team Seagal or Team Sumo? Comment below which side you're on, and tell me what country or city you're watching from right now." The air inside the arena had changed. Gone was the laughter, the mockery. In its place stood a heavy electric silence. Two men faced each other in the center of the mat. One a 400-pound wall of power, every muscle flexed and ready to crush. The other motionless, calm, as if standing in meditation amid a storm. The referee gave a small signal. "Begin." Hiroshi's body moved like a freight train. Each stomp rattled the stage. Sweat flew from his skin. He bent low, shoulder forward, his eyes locked on Seagal's chest, the perfect target. But Seagal didn't blink. He waited until the very last second. Then, with a subtle twist of the hips and the faintest movement of his hand, he redirected the charge. The 400-pound sumo lurched sideways, barely catching himself before crashing to the floor. Gasps filled the arena. It didn't look possible. Seagal hadn't used strength, hadn't even touched him with force. Just precision. The announcer's voice cracked through the microphone, half shocked, half excited. "Unbelievable control. Seagal redirects the attack again." Hiroshi's face flushed red. His pride was burning hotter than his muscles. He turned sharply and roared, pounding his chest. "No tricks. No balance games. Fight me straight." His translator echoed his words. The crowd roared in approval, wanting to see power versus power. Seagal simply nodded. "I don't fight," he said softly. "I teach," the crowd murmured, some laughing nervously. Others stared, realizing this wasn't arrogance, it was confidence born of mastery. Hiroshi crouched again. The sound of his breathing filled the microphones. He was angry now, really angry, and anger in martial arts is the fastest path to defeat. He charged again, faster this time, using everything he had. The mat thundered beneath his weight. The walls trembled. Seagal didn't move until Hiroshi was an arm's length away. Then, like water flowing around a rock, he shifted. One step to the side, one turn of the wrist. and suddenly Hiroshi's massive frame was no longer moving forward. It was spinning, off balance. In an instant, Seagal's hand guided the sumo's elbow down, and the 400-pound giant crashed to one knee. A sound like thunder echoed through the hall. The crowd gasped so loudly it felt like a wave of air. The cameras zoomed in. Seagal's face was emotionless, calm, focused, respectful. He wasn't trying to humiliate his opponent. He was simply showing truth. Hiroshi's chest heaved. He looked up, eyes wide, realizing what had happened. Seagal had used his own force against him. The sumo's trainer shouted something from the sidelines. Maybe encouragement. Maybe warning, but Hiroshi wasn't listening. He stood again, slower this time, a deep respect flickering behind the frustration in his eyes. He bowed slightly. Seagal bowed back. Then, for the first time, Hiroshi smiled, a short, grim smile of acknowledgement. "This time," he said, "I won't hold back." Seagal tilted his head. "You never were." The crowd exploded again. Everyone could feel it. Something incredible was coming. The announcer backed up, clutching his mic tightly. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is no longer a demonstration. This is a lesson in control." Hiroshi wiped the sweat from his brow and stomped, preparing for one final charge. This time he wasn't aiming to push. He was aiming to crush. He let out a primal roar and charged. The sound was terrifying. Pure power, raw and untamed. Seagal closed his eyes for a moment, centering his breath. Then, it happened. As Hiroshi came within inches, Seagal stepped inside the attack instead of away from it, a move so risky it made the audience gasp. In one lightning-fast motion, Seagal's hands shot up, one guiding Hiroshi's wrist, the other pressing lightly against his shoulder. He turned, pivoted, and the giant's balance vanished. 100 pounds of muscle and force lifted clean off the mat. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. Hiroshi's body suspended in mid-air, before gravity pulled him down hard. Boom! The mat shook violently. Silence. Then the roar of the crowd. People leapt from their seats. Phones flew into the air to capture the aftermath. The throw had looked impossible, like a man tossing a bear. Seagal stepped back quietly, bowed again, and walked toward the edge of the mat. No celebration, no smile, just stillness. Hiroshi lay on his back for a moment, stunned but unharmed. When he sat up, his eyes met Seagal's. There was no anger now, only disbelief and awe. He pressed both hands to the floor, bowed deeply, and said, "Teach me." The arena erupted into applause. Even those who came to laugh now stood to cheer. If you were in Seagal's place after being mocked like that, would you stay calm and humble? Or would you fire back to prove your point? Drop your answer in the comments and tell me honestly. Which would you choose? For a moment, the arena felt like it had stopped breathing. The echo of that thunderous slam still hung in the air. The sound of 400 pounds meeting the mat with unstoppable force. Cameras zoomed in on the scene. Hiroshi Takada, the undefeated sumo giant, lay on his back, eyes open wide in disbelief. Steven Seagal stood a few feet away, calm as a mountain, breathing evenly, not a single hair out of place. No one spoke. Even the announcer, who had been filling every silence with hype moments ago, was speechless. The only sound was the hum of cameras and the muffled gasps from the front row. Then, the crowd erupted. "What did we just see?" Someone screamed. Another shouted, "Play it back! Play it back!" Phones were already out. Hundreds of screens pointed toward the stage. Everyone replaying what had just happened in slow motion. On the jumbotron above, the replay began. Frame by frame, the impossible became clear. Seagal hadn't used strength. He hadn't grabbed, lifted, or struck. He had simply moved with perfect timing. As Hiroshi charged, Seagal's step and turn redirected the sumo's power, not against him, but through him. It was like watching nature itself bend. The replay slowed. You could see the moment of impact, Seagal's right hand gliding across Hiroshi's shoulder, his left wrist turning with precision. Then the massive body of the sumo left the ground for half a second, weightless, before slamming down. The audience gasped again, even on replay. Some covered their mouths. Others just stared in disbelief. Seagal bowed once more toward Hiroshi, his voice calm through the mic. "It's not about strength. It's about energy. When you respect it, it respects you." The crowd went quiet again, listening like students in a lesson they didn't realize they needed. Hiroshi sat up slowly, rubbing his shoulder, still stunned. For the first time, the mockery was gone from his eyes. There was only respect. He looked at Seagal and said, "I felt nothing. No impact, just air." Seagal nodded. "Because you attacked with emotion. Emotion blinds the body's balance." The translator repeated Seagal's words and Hiroshi nodded deeply. Then, in an act that stunned everyone watching, the sumo wrestler bowed low, forehead to the mat. The crowd gasped again. It wasn't a bow of defeat. It was one of deep respect. Seagal immediately bowed back just as low. Two warriors, two disciplines, meeting not in combat but in understanding. The announcer, finally finding his voice, stepped forward, his tone trembling with awe. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for both of these incredible masters. A true demonstration of skill and humility." The crowd exploded into applause. People were standing on their seats, cheering, clapping, whistling. Even those who had come to see a spectacle were now witnessing something deeper. A cameraman near the stage whispered to his colleague, "I thought this was going to be a joke." But that was real. That was art. Meanwhile, Hiroshi stood, wincing slightly but smiling. He turned toward the crowd and raised Seagal's hand into the air, a gesture of acknowledgement. The arena lights gleamed off both men as flash after flash went off. Then Seagal took the microphone, speaking in a slow, steady voice. "What you saw here today wasn't a fight. It was a lesson for all of us. Strength isn't what you use to control others. It's what you use to control yourself." The crowd hushed again. His voice carried the weight of truth. Calm, deep, commanding. He continued, "When we act with anger, we lose. When we act with balance, we win, not over others, but over ourselves." A woman in the crowd wiped a tear from her eye. Even Hiroshi's trainer nodded solemnly, and then Seagal turned to Hiroshi. "You are powerful. But remember, the greatest power is peace." Hiroshi smiled humbly, nodding. "Then today, I learned peace." The crowd erupted into cheers once more. People began chanting, "Seagal! Seagal! Seagal!" But Seagal shook his head gently, motioning for silence. He pointed at Hiroshi and said, "Today we all learned something together." The chant changed immediately. "Respect, respect, respect." It thundered through the arena, echoing off the walls, a single word that carried more power than any punch. Behind the cameras, producers looked at each other, mouths open. They knew what they had. This moment was viral gold. Clips would flood the internet within hours. Headlines would explode. Steven Seagal throws 400lb SUMO, but wins hearts instead. Back on stage, Seagal and Hiroshi bowed to each other one last time, side by side, as equals. Then they both turned to the crowd and bowed deeply together. The crowd stood in respect. An entire stadium united not by strength but by humility. What did you learn from this moment? Do you believe real strength is about power or control? Comment below with the word that best describes Seagal's move, strength or wisdom, and tell me which country or city you're watching from. The next morning, the world woke up to chaos, digital chaos. Clips of the unbelievable throw were everywhere, from YouTube to Twitter, TikTok to Reddit. The internet had found its new obsession. Headlines screamed across every platform. Steven Seagal humiliates 400lb SUMO wrestler with one move. Unbelievable. SUMO gets thrown like a feather by Aikido master. Seagal teaches the world a lesson in control, not violence. Within 24 hours, the video had crossed 50 million views. Reaction channels were dissecting every frame. Martial arts experts broke it down move by move. News outlets called it the most respectful defeat ever caught on camera. Clips showed the moment in slow motion. Seagal's calm face, the perfect timing, the gentle pivot, and the crowd's collective gasp when Hiroshi hit the mat. But what really caught everyone's attention wasn't just the throw. It was what happened after. The bow, the humility, the message. People weren't sharing it because Seagal won. They were sharing it because of how he won. On Japanese morning TV, hosts played the clip again and again. One said, "Hiroshi Takada, our strongest sumo, bowed to a foreign martial artist with complete sincerity. That's not defeat, that's respect." In the US, commentators called Seagal's performance the most zen moment in modern martial arts. Clips flooded social media of fans reenacting the scene, friends pretending to be Seagal and Hiroshi in living rooms. Parks, even classrooms. Memes popped up everywhere. When your calm beats their chaos, don't fight the storm, become the wind. Steven Seagal, the man who threw 400 pounds of ego with one flick. Even celebrities joined in. One famous MMA fighter tweeted, "That wasn't luck. That was mastery." People forget. Seagal was the real deal before Hollywood. Another, a sumo legend, posted, "Hiroshi showed true warrior spirit by bowing. That's honor. That's Japan." Meanwhile, deep in Tokyo, Hiroshi Takada sat quietly in a small studio for his first interview since the match. No crowd, no noise. Just him and a single camera. The interviewer leaned forward. "Hiroshi-san, can you tell us, what did you feel when Steven Seagal threw you?" Hiroshi smiled humbly, his massive hands folded in his lap. "When it happened," he said softly, "I didn't feel pain. I felt peace." He paused. "I realized, for years I've been training to crush, to win, to overpower. But Seagal showed me something else. He didn't want to hurt me. He wanted to teach me." He looked down, eyes misting slightly. "When I hit the ground, I thought I'd feel shame. But instead, I felt light, free." The interviewer nodded slowly. "And what did you learn?" Hiroshi looked up at the camera, his expression calm and sincere. "I learned that strength isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's spiritual. True strength is how softly you can stand when the world expects you to strike." The clip of his interview went just as viral as the original throw. People around the world began using his quote as captions, wallpapers, and video reels. Back in Los Angeles, Steven Seagal was seen leaving a dojo surrounded by reporters. One of them shouted, "Mr. Seagal, how does it feel to go viral again?" He smiled faintly and said, "I'm not interested in going viral. I'm interested in peace." Another reporter asked, "Did you expect to throw a 400-pound man like that?" Seagal chuckled quietly. "I didn't throw him. He threw himself. I just got out of the way." That line alone became a global soundbite. It was shared on every platform imaginable. Even motivational speakers started using it. Sometimes the best defense is stillness. Don't fight chaos, and step aside and let it fall. A week later, a press conference was held in Tokyo. Both Seagal and Hiroshi appeared side by side, smiling, bowing, and laughing like old friends. When asked what message they wanted to send the world, Seagal looked directly into the cameras and said, "If you respect your opponent, you never truly have enemies." Hiroshi added, "And if you lose with honor, you never truly lose." The crowd of journalists applauded. For a brief moment, the world wasn't divided by East and West, strength and size, fame and humility. It was united by one word: respect. The clip continued to circulate online. Teachers played it in classrooms. Coaches used it to inspire athletes. Parents showed it to their kids as an example of grace and discipline. One comment under the viral video summed it up perfectly. "In a world full of people trying to prove they're strong, this man proved it by staying calm." Another wrote, "That throw wasn't just physical, it was spiritual." And somewhere in a Tokyo dojo, Hiroshi began training again. Slower this time, calmer. He practiced Seagal's movements, not to copy them, but to understand them. Every day he whispered to himself the words he'd learned from that fateful moment. Control the storm. Don't become it. If this moment inspired you, tell me what lesson you took from Seagal and Hiroshi's story. Comment one word below that describes this moment. Respect, peace, or control, and let me know which country or city you're watching from. It had been 6 months since the viral throw that shook the martial arts world. The clip was still circulating, not as a fight video anymore, but as a life lesson. Students quoted it. Gyms played it before training. Even meditation pages used it to teach calm and balance. But one question kept showing up in comment sections everywhere. Will Seagal and Hiroshi ever meet again? That answer came one sunny afternoon in Tokyo. Posters went up across the city. 1 year later, The Way of Respect, Steven Seagal and Hiroshi Takada, live. The event was set in a packed arena, the same one where the throw had taken place. Only this time the air felt different. No tension, no mockery, no rivalry, just curiosity and admiration. Thousands filled the seats. The crowd was buzzing. Cameras were ready. On stage, a single white mat waited. The same kind where Hiroshi had once fallen but now gleaming under a golden spotlight. When Steven Seagal walked out, the crowd erupted in applause. He bowed deeply, smiling slightly, the same calm expression that had won millions over. Moments later, Hiroshi entered. The 400-pound sumo wrestler looked leaner, sharper, but still carried that same unshakable presence. This time, though, there was no smirk, only a smile of genuine respect. As the two men approached each other, the crowd held its breath. Would they fight again? Would they demonstrate something new? Instead, Hiroshi stopped in front of Seagal and bowed deeply, holding the position for several seconds. The crowd fell completely silent. Then Seagal bowed back, placing a hand gently on Hiroshi's shoulder. A wave of applause swept through the arena like thunder. The host stepped forward with a microphone. 6 months ago, you gave the world one of the most powerful lessons in humility and control, he said. Today, millions are watching again. What message do you want to share? Seagal took the mic, his voice deep and calm. When the world saw that moment, they saw a throw. But I saw something else. I saw two souls learning from each other. I didn't defeat Hiroshi. We both learned balance. The crowd nodded, many recording, many wiping quiet tears. Hiroshi took the mic next. In that moment, he said, I learned that true power doesn't shout. It whispers. The man I mocked became my teacher, not because he threw me down, but because he lifted me up. The crowd erupted into cheers again. Seagal gestured toward the mat. Shall we show them? The two men took their positions again, not as opponents, but as partners. This time, instead of a clash, they performed a demonstration of harmony. Seagal moved with fluid grace. Hiroshi responded with perfect timing. Every motion flowed like water meeting earth. The crowd watched in complete silence, mesmerized. At one point, Seagal guided Hiroshi's wrist and the sumo master effortlessly followed, rolling softly onto the mat. Not a fall, but a dance. He stood up immediately, smiling, the crowd cheering in awe. By the end, both men stood in the center, bowing to each other. The audience gave a standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. After the demonstration, both men sat down for a live talk on stage. The host asked, Master Seagal, what has changed since that day? Seagal smiled faintly. People talk about viral fame, about views and headlines. But what changed for me was this: I realized how hungry the world is for peace. People are tired of anger. They want control, calm, and purpose. Then the host turned to Hiroshi. And for you, Takada-san? Hiroshi leaned forward, his massive hands folded together. I used to think strength was about pushing harder, hitting faster. But now, I train to breathe. I train to understand. The moment you can control yourself, you can handle anything and even defeat. The crowd applauded again. Seagal nodded, adding softly, and that is the greatest victory. Clips from the event hit the internet that same night. Within hours, hashtags like /way of respect and Seagal and Takada began trending worldwide. The clip of their synchronized demonstration hit 20 million views in a day. People commented things like, "This is what the world needs right now, peace over pride. I came for a fight, but I stayed for the wisdom. Two warriors. One lesson, control the chaos." Martial arts schools from Japan to Brazil started teaching the Way of Respect seminars, using their story as inspiration. Even corporate coaches used it to talk about emotional balance in leadership. The story had transcended fighting. It had become philosophy. One scene from the live show became especially famous. As the crowd applauded, Seagal placed his palm over his heart and said, "Remember, we fight not to defeat others, but to defeat our ego." That quote spread across social media like wildfire. It was printed on shirts, posters, and dojo walls worldwide. Even Hiroshi, once a symbol of brute force, became a global ambassador for peace and discipline. He opened a new training center in Osaka called Dojo of Balance. Its slogan, "Strength with calm, power with peace." If these two legends can turn rivalry into respect, what's stopping us from doing the same in our own lives? Comment below. Are you on Team Strength or Team Peace? And don't forget to tell me what country or city you're watching from. Months had passed since the reunion, yet the story of Steven Seagal and Hiroshi Takada continued to ripple across the globe. From martial arts dojos in Tokyo to gyms in Los Angeles, and even offices in London, The viral video was being replayed, analyzed, and discussed. It wasn't just a clip anymore. It was a lesson and a symbol. Teachers showed it to students. Parents shared it with children. Leaders used it as an example of calm under pressure. People from every corner of the world were talking about the moment when strength met wisdom and ego met humility. Social media was flooded with creative content, reenactments of the throw in parks and gyms, memes highlighting the contrast between size and skill, short videos overlaying Seagal's calm voice with motivational messages. Even in Japan, Hiroshi's dojo, the dojo of balance, became a pilgrimage site for martial artists. Students lined up for hours to train under him, hoping to learn the discipline he had discovered. One viral headline summed up the phenomenon perfectly: 400lb SUMO versus Seagal, the viral throw that taught the world respect. In interviews, Hiroshi reflected on the journey. Before that day, I thought power was everything. Today, I understand its control over the body, the mind, and the heart. That lesson has changed how I live, how I train, how I teach. Seagal, meanwhile, continued traveling the world, giving demonstrations and seminars, and not for fame, but to share a simple philosophy: don't fight the storm. Learn to flow with it. That's how you win without fighting. Even months later, the clip continued to inspire millions. Parents told their children, "See? Strength isn't about pushing others down. It's about rising yourself with calm." Hiroshi and Seagal occasionally met again in small private dojos. Each time they would bow, perform synchronized techniques, and speak quietly about balance and respect. The cameras never followed. These meetings were sacred, a reminder that humility, not fame, was the true victory. The world had changed in subtle ways because of that one viral moment. People shared it not to celebrate a throw, but to celebrate what it represented: mastery without arrogance, power without cruelty, humility in the face of challenge. Even years later, the story continued to appear in motivational seminars, leadership conferences, and online tutorials. It became a modern parable. One act of calm and respect can ripple out and influence millions. The final, most powerful image remained the same: Seagal and Hiroshi standing side by side, bowing to each other, the crowd behind them rising in a standing ovation. It wasn't about who was bigger, stronger, or more famous. It was about what they taught the world with one moment. And the lesson was simple: respect transcends size. Wisdom beats arrogance. True power is found in calm, control, and humility. If you believe in respect over pride, wisdom over strength, and calm over chaos, type respect in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe for more inspiring moments like this one. Let's spread the lesson around the world.